Hello, everyone, and welcome back to today's Training Industry Learning Tech Showcase, Coaching and Learner Support Tools, sponsored by Admired Leadership, CloudShare, Corporate Visions, and Integrity Solutions. My name is Emma. I'm a marketing associate here at Training Industry, and I want to thank you all for taking your time to be here today. Before we get started, I just have a few housekeeping items to go over to help you get the most out of today's session. So throughout today's event, please feel free to use the chat for comments and submit questions in the Q&A panel. It looks like a little Q&A in your Zoom toolbar. All of the questions will be addressed during the event or at the end of the program during our Q&A section. Once the session ends, a brief survey will appear in your browser, and we'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment and give us some feedback on the session and the speaker. And as always, all of our sessions are being recorded and will be archived on trainingindustry.com, and you'll receive a follow-up email from us with a link to the on-demand sessions. If this is your first Training Industry event, we'd like to welcome you. Training Industry exists to make connections among learning and development professionals. We offer tons of resources to support your role in L&D through live events like today's showcase, as well as through articles on our website, our magazine, conferences, research reports, and more. We'd also love to hear about what you've learned from today's session on social media, so please follow us on your favorite platforms so we can continue the conversation there. And now, without any further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce you to our speaker, Matt Coyne, Managing Director at Admired Leadership. Thanks so much for being here, Matt.
Thank you, Emma, and hello, everyone. It's great to be with you this afternoon or this morning or this evening, whatever time it is where you are. I see in the chat we've got people from all over the place. But as Emma said, my name is Matt Coyne. I'm a Managing Director at CRA Admired Leadership, joined by my colleague Sierra Holland, who is also a Managing Director at our firm. And we're excited to talk today about scaling executive coaching via artificial intelligence, specifically through the lens of something we've built that we're really excited about. But before we get into that, just a quick overview of who we are and kind of how we think about leadership and where we see AI fitting into all of this. CRA Admired Leadership is a leadership development and advisory firm. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary in April, so we've been at this for quite a while. Traditionally and historically, through one-on-one executive coaching and leadership development programs. So that's the work we've always done. It's the work we still do today. And we're looking at artificial intelligence as a way to really extend that and bring really good leadership development and coaching to more people, which I think is something hopefully a lot of you have been thinking about, and certainly something we've been thinking about. Our approach to leadership development is a little different than a lot of people out there. We take what we call a behavioral approach. So when we are coaching leaders and working with teams, we really want to be specific on the behaviors and the things they can do to become a more effective leader. The way we've found these behaviors we coach on is through studying really effective leaders. So we've studied thousands of leaders to really isolate what is it that they do that other people don't. And if we can identify those behaviors, we can coach people on those. People can start adopting those behaviors to become more effective leaders themselves. So that's our leadership philosophy. And you'll start to see that come in when we talk about this tool we've built, Alex, in just a second. But really, our philosophy is leadership is about what you do. And our definition of leadership is that leadership is making people in situations better. So what we think that means is that anyone can lead. Leadership is not a title. Leadership is something you choose to do, and it's something anyone can do when we want to make a situation better, or we want to make other people better. So, thus the reason we're so excited to be able to scale executive coaching via artificial intelligence, because there are a lot of leaders in our organization who maybe haven't been able to get access to executive coaching traditionally. So I'm going to share my screen in just a second so that we can walk through a tool we've built to do this. But before I do, Sierra's going to drop a question into the chat. Would love to just get a feel from the group. As Sierra put in the question here, roughly what percentage of leaders in your organization would you say receive executive coaching today? Just ballpark it. And then second question is in a perfect ideal world, what would you like that percentage to be? So go ahead and drop those in. And I'm going to share my screen here and walk through a tool we've built called Alex and explain, what's different about it and why we think it's such a powerful thing for people to be thinking about. So yeah, I see 10%, 100%. Ideally, a lot of people shooting for 100%. We agree. And so let's talk about what that looks like. So as I mentioned, traditionally, for the past 38 years, up until 2 years ago, our coaching was all one-on-one individual executive coaching or group development programs. By definition, like that's finite. There's only so many people a single person can coach. And so we decided a few years ago to build a virtual AI-powered leadership coach, which we call Alex, which stands for Admired Leadership Excellence, which is trained on the same things that Sierra and I are trained on as coaches within our firms. And we've also built it to engage with users the way that we want our coaches to engage with the people we coach. So we're gonna walk through kind of what's different about that and why that's different from Copilot or ChatGPT. And we want to actually show this thing in action. As I'm doing that, if you all have questions, please just drop them into the chat. Sierra will flag them for me. We'll also hold some time at the end for a dedicated Q&A. So with that said, let me pull up my screen here and let's see this thing and let's talk about it. Okay. So everyone should be seeing a Copilot window. Sierra, can you just give me a thumbs up if we see it?
Looks
Okay.
great.
Okay, so this is Microsoft Copilot right now, not Alex. We think Copilot's a great tool. We use it a bit ourselves. Our clients certainly use it. But I want to start by showing kind of what it might look like to take a pretty standard leadership question and leadership challenge to a more general AI tool like Copilot. So fairly common scenario here. The prompt I have in is I need to start holding someone more accountable. Give me some tips for how I can do it relationally. So something we get all the time. We'll see Copilot's response, and then we want to show Alex's response to just get a feel for how it engages differently. Okay, so right away, we've got a quick answer from Copilot, and 4 steps this time. I've run this a few times. Last time I ran it, I got eight suggestions, but really quick, 4 steps: observable facts, not judgments, explain the impact, make the accountability conversation mutual, get extremely clear about future expectations. And then it gives me a script, a mindset shift, guidance for if the behavior doesn't change, all based on one simple question. And this is decent advice. This is probably advice you would get if you asked, a relatively competent professional what they thought. But let's see how Alex responds to the exact same prompt. Because like I said, the two things that are a little bit different about Alex are how it engages with users and also the content it pulls from for its coaching. So same prompt to Alex. Taking a second here. There we go. And so, not surprised, this is exactly what I expected Alex to do, which is exactly what Sierra would do if I picked up the phone and called her and asked her this question. Alex is saying, "Tell me a little bit more before I give you actual advice." So, one thing as we start to move through a couple other conversations you'll see here is that Alex is trained to gather the appropriate context before it starts to give coaching advice, which is again is just what we would want an actual human coach to do. So. I want to move into a couple specific conversations where we go deeper with Alex, but I did just want to show that difference right off the bat. So let me move here into a different tab. I'm going to close out of this one. So let's now move into another pretty common scenario, a situation where I'm a leader who needs to give difficult feedback to someone on my team. And I want to kind of talk through the way Alex handles this type of thing. And again, a little bit about why that's different from what we would get if we were doing this with ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot or whatever. So pretty simple prompt to start. I need to give one of my direct reports some difficult feedback. She's talented, but tends to dominate conversations and meetings, and I don't think she realizes the impact it's having on the rest of the team. Not sure how to approach it. I'm sure none of us have ever worked with anyone like this or been in this position. So we'll see how Alex responds here. Um, So again, Alex is starting by saying, first of all, how you frame this conversation is going to matter. But second, tell me a little bit more about what's happening. What does this actually look like in practice that is leading you to bring it up? So I'm responding, what's actually happening is that she jumps in before others have a chance to respond. She finishes people's sentences, et cetera, et cetera. And people have started waiting for her to speak rather than contributing themselves because they know she's going to. So that's a little bit more context for Alex. And now that Alex has just enough context to coach, which again is how we want people to coach, get enough, but you don't need too much. Alex is now getting into coaching mode. So first of all, pointing out that, the real dynamic here that matters is that the rest of the team is shutting down. So that's as much of a thing to solve for as the individual behavior. But then it's giving me two very specific coaching points. So it's not giving me a list of 10 things to consider or 10 principles. It is giving me two behavioral coaching points that we could have this person do. And the first of which is rather than leading with, here's what you're doing wrong, is to actually deliver the feedback through asking for her help. So that's something that we coach on often. We know it's an approach that works. And so in this case, it's saying, here's something you might want to think about is rather than giving her the feedback directly, you can say, actually, I need your help getting the rest of the team engaged. And you can still deliver that feedback in the same way, but in a way that's less likely to trigger defensiveness. And then the second piece, the second coaching point it's giving me is to actually just lead with the observation. So mention, saying, hey, I've noticed that when you do this, the team shuts down. And again, let's problem solve this together. So quickly getting into specific behavioral coaching points rather than a long list of considerations. But then asking, going a bit deeper, which again is what Sierra would do if she were coaching someone through this. So the next question here is about self-awareness. Does she know this is a problem? Has she ever heard this? And the answer here is that really it's just like this is coming from a place of enthusiasm. She's excited, and so she speaks really quickly. But she's relatively early in her career, so I would be surprised if this is feedback she's gotten before. Context that matters for this conversation. So with that context, Alex is coming back and actually kind of reinforcing the coaching point from earlier, which is basically saying, hey, this is actually kind of a good problem to have. She's over enthusiastic. That's very coachable. I would lean into this idea of asking her for help and enlisting her to solve a problem as opposed to just giving the feedback. And using that to name the positive qualities you see in her and how you think they're driving. One interesting thing it begins to do here, which again is what a good coach would do here, is it's not just giving me exactly what I've asked for, it's actually introducing new things for me to think about. So that's what it does in the second half of this response here, where, sorry to jump ahead there. There we go. It's saying, one thing you should know is that because this is the first time she's hearing this, she may actually overreact and she may actually over-index on this feedback and potentially shut down. So you need to be mindful of that. And it's pointing me to a resource. So one of the things that Alex has access to is a lot of our intellectual property. Including our daily leadership newsletters, so which are called field notes. So Alex is proactively saying, hey, there's actually a field note that's exactly about this potential of overreaction. You may want to read that. And so I could directly here in Alex click the link and it's going to take me straight to that field note. So I personally, when I'm using Alex, I ask for field notes all the time. I say, hey, I'm working through this situation. Are there any relevant field notes that I should read? And I can get them directly in the platform. So it's giving me the field note, and now it's saying, all right, how are you going to actually have this conversation? I say that we have a one-on-one later this week, and I want to address it there. And I ask specifically, should I do it at the beginning? Sorry about that. Or should I wait until we cover our usual items? Alex is giving me very specific advice here. Bring it up early, but not immediately. Like have the interpersonal talk, then bring it up. And it's giving me, again, another very specific coaching point, which is before you say anything else, ask her how she thinks these are going. So one thing we'll often coach people on is when you have feedback, it could be a good idea to get the other person to talk first so that you know where they stand on this and you're not blindsiding them. So that's the advice Alex is giving here. It's advice I've given a million times. And again, it's going to pull in resources from our various platforms. In this case, a video about that approach to giving feedback, which I won't play, but I could play it live directly in the chat. So we've started by kind of giving just enough context to get these very specific coaching points. And now, I've gotten a handful of coaching points, but not a laundry list. And I've gotten them in a very intentional and specific order. And so at the end, I'm just saying, hey, great. Can you go ahead and quickly summarize the main coaching points we've covered so that I have it all in one place and can use this as a checklist as I prep? Keep it simple. And so eventually, I get to a bit of a list, but it's a short list and it's a focus list and it's informed by the context, not by a generic ask with no context. Which again this is kind of how a coaching conversation in reality with a human coach might end is, all right, let's go over the main things we covered. You don't need to do every single one of these, but here are kind of the key things to think about. And all of these things frame it as asking for help, getting the person to talk first, name the effect, anchor in the strengths. All of those things are very specific, concrete, and actionable behaviors and actions the person can take. They're not mindset shifts. They're not principles. They're things that I, in this case, could actually do ahead of this conversation. So that's one example, common situation preparing for a feedback conversation. I know that a lot of people use Alex. I mean, I think anecdotally, the use cases I hear most from users are preparatory like that. Like I've got a hard conversation, a hard meeting, a hard whatever the case. Help me prepare so I'm more ready. So I do want to show one other angle of using Alex, but before I do, Sierra, anything from the chat that we need to flag or anything that you would add?
Nothing yet. I think let's get to this next one and then I'll be monitoring the chat for anything new.
Okay, great. All right. So that was about feedback. Let's now talk about this slightly different one, which is actually, it's still a bit in this preparing mode, but it's actually preparing written communication. So in addition to all of the leadership content that Alex is trained on and that Alex knows a lot about communication and a lot about leadership communication. So in this case, I am a new leader. Now I'm the SVP of sales at a financial services company, and I'm getting ready to announce a reorg. And so I've given Alex just a bit of context here. We're consolidating regional teams into a2centralized structure. There is real upside here, so there's better resource allocation, less duplication, clear accountability. But there's also downside, which is that two director positions are being eliminated, and a number of people will have new managers. And so I'm telling Alex, all right, this is what's going on. I've drafted a memo. I'd like your feedback on it. Alex's response, would probably be Sierra's response as well, is happy to look at the memo, but we should probably talk first about whether this is even the right channel to begin with. So again, if I had given that prompt to Copilot, Copilot would have said, here you go, or yeah, give it to me, let's go. Alex is going to push. It pushes users, it pushes me all the time, and I know the stuff that it knows. But in this case, it's pushing, like before I review the memo, let's make sure that this approach is the right one. And so in this case, it's saying, particularly for the sensitive news around the two regional directors, you may not want them to be hearing the news in the memo. So, but then, in helpful Alex mode says, I am helpful to give you feedback on the draft. Go ahead and share it. So I have let Alex know that I'm good. I actually I will be talking to those two directors before. Thanks for flagging, but we're covered there. So here's the actual draft memo. I'm not going to read this memo in its entirety, but it's a pretty standard, straightforward organization announcement message. I want to share some important news about how we're going to organize the function. After several months of careful analysis, we've made the decision to make these changes. Here's the case for the change. I want to be direct about what this means for the team. Two director roles will be eliminated. These are talented people. Not a decision we've made lightly. For the rest of you, there will be some new reporting changes, more details to come. I know this can feel unsettling, and I want you to know my door is always open. So pretty standard org announcement memo, not terrible, but let's see what Alex thinks. So solid foundation, but pointing out a few things to push on. So the first is around this gap in the details. So we say more details will be shared next week, but we don't actually answer the question as Alex is saying, like, what does this mean for me specifically? Which, as Alex points out, is going to be the thing that everyone thinks about first. So it's pointing out the potential flaw that that brings, but it's also giving a point of view on what to do about it. So in this case, in the second half of this paragraph, if there's a way to include even a high level picture of the new structure in this memo, I'd strongly encourage it. And you'll see that rhythm repeat through these next couple points. Is it's going to point out potential flaw, explain why, and then give specific advice for what to do about it. So the second one it points out is the closing line about your door always being open. It's and this one, as I was reading this, I was like, this is actually a very good point. So well-intentioned, but everyone says it, nobody ever knows what it means. And so if Alex is saying here, if your goal is to signal actual accessibility, do so specifically. Tell them what you'll be doing to be accessible, not just that your door will be open. And then the last one, point similarly, this was not a decision we made lightly, is kind of just a cliche statement that goes in all of these things at this point. Alex is saying again, if your goal is for people to feel that this was a difficult decision, be specific about what made it hard. So very, pointing out three things, explaining why, and then giving specific advice for what to do about it. Again, it's pointing to another field note here. So it's saying we have a field note about exactly this. You should go read it. And then it's offering to help her draft a message, which I'm saying in this case, actually, no, I'm good. I'll revise it myself with that in mind. That's helpful. But I want to think about where to go from here. So as I think about these next few weeks, what are the three most common things people could get wrong in situations like these? And what do I need to make sure I do to get those things right? So our approach is fairly contrarian. We think there's a lot of value to be had in looking past conventional wisdom. So one thing I do all the time is I ask Alex, like, what's the conventional wisdom here? Where might that fall flat? What should we do instead? So that's essentially what I'm saying here. And so I asked for three. Alex gives me three. The first is that people tend to underestimate how long the uncertainty lingers. Um, and, leaders tend to think once the announcement is made, the hard part is over. So making the point here that this may feel over for you because you've been working on it for so long, but this is brand new to everyone. So making sure you're being really intentional about sustaining communication about this and planning to over communicate in the weeks after the announcement, not just in the moment. Second point, presuming more support than actually exists. Again, linking to a field note here about that very topic. And it's saying, don't assume, you should assume that everyone needs to be convinced, not just informed. And then third is failing to localize the change for individuals. So then it gets into this connecting thread. But again, three things to think about, three things to do about those. And as with any conversation, we can go deeper on any of them. So in this case, I've said, what would you mentioned we need to over communicate? Like, what would that actually look like? Tell me what to do, how I could do that. And so here, we just get a more specific explanation of what that could mean. We could take this even deeper. We could say, okay, give me let's build an actual plan, like a day by day or week by week plan. We could take it in any direction. But again, the idea here is that we're moving from general context to very specific coaching, pulling in resources as needed, making the coaching as kind of actionable and practical as we can. So I'm happy we could take this one further, or we could open it up. But those are just wanted to kind of give the general feel for the tool, what's different about it. But actually, before we do open it up to questions, just a couple, I'm gonna take down my screen for a second. But want to just emphasize one thing as we look at the broader AI discourse and what we're seeing in all of our clients and in the broader, world around AI is that the dominant frame that most organizations are leading with is efficiency. So when we talk about AI, we're talking about a tool that can help us do more and do it faster and perhaps do it with less resources. There's no ignoring the validity of that. Like AI can absolutely help us do more. It can help us do stuff faster, and potentially it can help us do more with fewer resources. There's an entire other for you all as learning and development leaders, there's an entire other side of the AI equation, which we think is slightly under discussed, but actually more compelling than efficiency. And that is using AI to get better, using AI to elevate our own skills, using AI to elevate the quality of our work. And that's the bigger, more compelling thing in our view. That's why we build Alex. Alex is not an efficiency tool. Like there are ways that Alex could save you time, but Alex or any other AI coach is not about efficiency. It's about getting better. And so whether it's with Alex or any other AI tool, our biggest piece of advice for you all as leaders, and we're sure you're already aware of this, is to continue to reinforce that other side of the equation in your organizations. How can we use AI not just to do stuff faster, but how can we be intentional about using AI to make people better, to elevate the quality of our work? Because that's an entire universe of really exciting stuff that we just don't see as much of, and you don't see as much of in the news. It's not the big scary stuff. It's actually the exciting stuff. And just one last quote that I'll leave with here is that um, we took this from someone else, but the quote I always think about, I think about this for my own work, I think about this with my team, I think about this for my children, is AI is both the best tool ever created for learning and the best tool ever created for avoiding learning. It's a question of how we choose to use it. And so if we extend that to be about growth and development, not just about learning, I think AI is certainly one of the best tools we've ever had to grow and develop people. It can also be one of the most powerful tools we've ever had to stunt the development of people if we use it in ways that are perhaps not as intentional as we should. It's about intention. It's about where we direct that energy. So Alex is our entry into that space we think it's the best tool out there for using AI to help people get better, become better leaders, make people in situations better. But regardless of what AI you're using, choosing to use it in that way is a really powerful way to be thinking about it and to make sure your organizations are thinking about it. So I will stop there. Sierra, anything you will add before we get any final questions?
Nothing I'd add. But
Okay.
there is a question that I think is important to consider here, which is how should organizations think about where a tool like Alex fits into coaching programs they may already have running?
Yeah, I mean, the way it's a good question. The way we think about it is we certainly don't see it as replacing human coaching. I mean, that would be bad for our firm. We have
Mhm.
more human coaches than we've ever had. We see it as complementing and extending. So the reality is, and we saw it in the responses to the question in the chat earlier, we probably can't afford or feasibly get a human coach for every single person we would want. And so the question becomes, what can we get them that maybe it's not that full scale human coach, but what can we get into their hands? And so that's the biggest way we think about it is how do we use Alex and I should be sharing my screen here based on that question in the chat. I just pulled up a QR code that you can use to get 30 days of access to Alex. We'll also send a link afterwards. Um, but yeah, just to finish that point, think is extending executive coaching, not replacing it. There's a role for both. There are things that you can do, Sierra, as a coach that Alex can't. Like that's just the reality of it.
It looks like it's taking a minute for Matt's screen to share. Can you see it yet, Sarah?
Not just yet, but I'll make sure that we get that. I can quickly answer the question from Jennifer that yes, Alex is available to
Sorry, can
speak
you
to you. Go ahead, Matt. We can hear you now, but we
sorry.
can't see your screen yet.
Yeah, I just pulled it down. We'll send a link as a follow-up. I just got a message
Oh no.
I know there's been all kinds of trouble with
Same.
the weather in Chicago the past week.
That is true.
I will get the link shared out to all of you, but if you just search Lead with Alex, it should come up very quickly. And yes, Alex is available to speak in different languages. If you are curious about your language, you can ask Alex, can we speak in Spanish? And Alex will quickly switch into it. We have some resource documents on our website as well, where you can learn about what languages Alex is available in.
Excellent. That's all the time we have. Thank you both so much, Matt. We can't see you, but that was an excellent presentation. I think we all got a lot out of it. I'm excited to test Alex myself. So thanks again for being here.
Thanks for having us.
All right, everyone, that's it for today's Learning Tech Showcase. Thank you again to all of our dynamic speakers and to our sponsors, Admired Leadership, CloudShare, Corporate Visions, and Integrity Solutions. All of today's sessions are pre-qualified for a credit hour by SHRM, SHRM, HRCI, ISPI, and CPTM. I also want to let you guys know about the Training Industry Strategy Summit coming up this fall. The Strategy Summit offers 3 days of intensive learning and collaboration. You'll leave equipped with the tools, frameworks, and insights you need to lead L&D strategy with confidence. You'll be ready to implement those changes in your organization. We also have our AI Essentials for L&D course. If you're looking to elevate your L&D career, you can revolutionize your training programs with artificial intelligence and drive impactful results. You can learn to use AI for skills gap analysis and personalized learning pathways and tips for ethical AI use in L&D with the AI Essentials for Training Managers certificate. One last reminder that a survey is going to pop open in your browser, and we'd really appreciate your feedback. Byron, you can receive a credit hour for each session that you attended. Just send us an email and let us know which ones you were in. Thank you all again for joining us. Until next time, I am Emma, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks again for joining.